What's up, everybody? Captain America Brave New World turned in a successful opening weekend, and now it's an uphill battle from there with the low cinema score and an overall mixed reaction from fans. But today I wanted to dive into the 5 biggest problems with the movie, and if I don't mention something that you know was a big problem for you with the movie, please drop it down in the comments below. Now let's get into my list. These aren't going to be in any particular order, they all plague the movie in their own separate ways throughout the movie, but let's get the big one out of the way first, the final fight between Red Hulk and Cap. Now, I'm sure some people have a problem with it simply because Sam beats him without the serum, but they work around that. The problem actually lies, at least for me, in that workaround because it's not a bad concept that they had. I like, and still do like, even after watching the movie twice, the idea of Sam fighting him until he can't anymore, meaning his vibranium gear is beat to hell, and then he resorts to the little therapy session that we see in the movie. Like, if you told me that, a couple months ago that was how the movie was going to end, I'd definitely be a bit skeptical, but I'd see the potential. However, in the movie it fails because Betty Ross just doesn't appear. The fact she only had that final scene at the raft in a movie that starts with an attempt on her father's life is insane. But it all could have been fixed if she just showed up in the cherry blossom field. Instead, they give Mackie a bland speech to deliver after a pretty badass fight. Like, everything leading up to the therapy was pretty damn cool, but like most of the movie, the dialogue failed this scene. Even if Betty doesn't appear, a stronger speech that gave Mackie something, anything to work with could have made this a better conclusion. Next up, sticking in the same realm with the villains of the movie, we unfortunately gotta talk about Giancarlo Esposito's Sidewinder. It's a shame this was his MCU debut because Giancarlo did his thing, but from both his interviews and the movie itself, this was merely an introduction for Sidewinder. So in a strange way, Giancarlo actually got the job done, delivering a badass performance to try and keep you interested in his character for the future, and it did work with me, but the movie script fails him. He and honestly, the entire Serpent Society were incredibly underwhelming after being introduced as a group who has possession of and is stealing adamantium. There's also the element of him coming in and his dialogue implies all this history for Sidewinder in the universe, but they don't even touch the surface of that. First, he's a pawn in the adamantium deal, then he's hellbent on killing Captain America after running away from him at the church before he tells Cap everything he needs to know about the leader, but still, somehow, he wasn't even the worst villain in the movie. We'll get to that in a second though, because we've got to hit another wasted actor for a minute, Danny Ramirez. The sky's the limit for Danny and he couldn't get off the ground with what they wrote for Joaquin Torres in this movie. It was a damn shame. For one, and Marvel and Kevin Feige, they made these expectations, they set them, they made this comparison, not me. If this was to be like Winter Soldier, then Joaquin was going to be a key part of that movie. Anthony Mackie brought his Mackie swag to the movie, providing a sort of inside the MCU universe, juvenile aspect to the movie and fighting supervillains despite Sam's military experience. Now, it's not exactly the same here because we met Joaquin in the show, of course, but he's still very new to being Falcon, so he could have been the same in this movie. Not exactly the same, but served the same purpose. He could have provided that brief laugh or calm moment in a tense, dark movie like Sam did in Winter Soldier, but again, the dialogue fails because it feels more like Falcon and the Winter Soldier, a Disney Plus show, than Captain America, the Winter Soldier, one of the best MCU movies. But to be fair, they do have that great moment at the end of the movie with Joaquin in the hospital. Maybe it was somebody else that wrote that scene, or who knows, maybe the writers were just locked in the day they wrote that, but it was on a completely different level than the rest of the movie, so I guess credit where credit's due. Then before we get into my final 2 problems with the movie, at least for the purpose of this video, my top 5 problems, I'd appreciate it greatly if you subscribe to the channel as I bring you daily videos from the nerdy world. But I won't waste any more time, let's get back to the video. Alright, if I was ranking these, this would be my number 1 problem with the movie, and that's the leader. Everything from the design down to the display of his intelligence was just miss, miss, which sucks because Tim Blake Nelson rocks and he seemed real excited to return when it was announced. But starting with the design, well, for one, it's terrible, but I don't think it was the original design. There's a shot very early in the movie, I think it was before the title card, where we see inside Camp Echo 1 and see him walking in the shadows. In that shot, I believe, and I don't know anything for sure, but I do believe we see him with what would have been the original look. They just move him out of focus and it's much closer to the most popular look for him in the comics. But the design for the character wasn't the end of the world because it fits the tone they were going for in this movie, and also the makeup department, they did a fine job. The bigger problem, it was the display of his intelligence because to me, he comes off as an idiot, not a mastermind. Like, his entire plan is to bring out Red Hulk and show the people Ross still has a dark side, but then in the movie, we learn he's already been increasing the dosage of Ross's gamma pills, so what's the point of this elaborate plan? Why not just make, a drastic increase to the pills and bring out the monster? But let's just say, for whatever reason, he couldn't. Then why not brainwash Ross like he does to 99.99999% of the people in this movie? I mean, all it takes for him is flashing lights he's programmed, and Ross comes into that lab as often as he needs the pills. That's unlimited opportunities over a 16-year period. I'll even drop it to a 10-year period just to be generous since he didn't get the lab right away at Echo Base 1, and he resorts to what we see in the movie. I genuinely couldn't have been more disappointed with this character. Finally, I hate to pile on to anything, but this one was tough, and that was Ruth Bat-Seraph. Now, I've only been following the MCU behind the scenes movement and, keeping track of projects before they release for the past couple years, but I have to say, I think this is the most a character has been butchered and it was way too obvious. They cut a ton of her scenes out of this movie, but they either don't cut the entire scenes or they leave important scenes that don't have follow-up scenes because those got cut. Like, you most definitely feel her importance to the story, and to make another Winter Soldier comparison, she felt like she was the Natasha Romanoff of this movie, and is even a former widow too, but there's just no payoff because, like I said, the follow-up scenes just get cut. She has those two action sequences she's involved in, immobilizing the shooters in the White House, then chasing Isaiah, and also the hallway scene at Echo Base 1, which was badass. But then after that, she spends her time walking in the shadows of Sam and JOAQUIN because she's supposed to be part of that trio. It's supposed to be a trio, and they just cut it. But I'm not even saying it would have been a good arc if they hadn't cut this stuff. We'll never know because they sent it into Kingdom Come. Maybe they grabbed the best of what Shira Haas's performance had to offer and ditched the rest. I don't know. I can't see behind the curtains, but this character feels like a moment where Marvel Studios caved in and damaged a product to please a vocal minority of the fandom. It was just a shitty situation all around with the character. But that's going to do it for today's video. Despite everything I just talked about here, I still enjoyed this movie because of two people that I didn't mention all too much outside of that final fight, Anthony Mackie and Harrison Ford. Those two were simply great together, and they carried this movie to a point where, at the very least, it's a fun popcorn movie. That's just my opinion though. Let me know what you thought some of the movie's biggest problems were down in the comments below, and make sure you have a great day.